everybody, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. I am Justin, or Soft Pillows, and this is...
This is Derek, or Bird That Steals. Still liking that name.
Yeah,
Still digging it.
It suits you. How have you been, man?
Pretty good. It's been a busy week, so apologies everybody. I know Justin and I talked about getting episodes out on Sunday, and today is Sunday, and we're just recording. It's been a busy weekend. My most I assume yours is probably busy too, but I think probably more on my end is probably why we didn't record. But my kids' birthdays are next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, and they'll be with their other parents. So we were celebrating this weekend, and I had a wedding to go to also yesterday. So didn't really give me much chance to jump on here with Justin.
No worries. I had to work all this week and then yesterday, so I didn't get home until about 10 o'clock at night, which would have made it a super early morning, or super late night, rather, because uh, this chapter was hefty.
Yeah, he's a chunky boy. Yeah, it would have been a late night and an early morning both ways. So
Right, and
um,
last thing we want to do is rush through this chapter.
yeah, I don't really think that'll be possible.
No, we tried.
So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, we'll be able to get back on track. I got yeah, I'll have to see how things go. Because what I think we'll probably what are we gonna shoot for Wednesday to record again here? Is that right? Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday we should be able to record. I mean, I should be able to get a fair amount of the editing done today, so hopefully I can get it out tonight. But probably Monday or Tuesday at the latest.
Sure. Okay. I was just thinking we've got dance competition again this weekend, so that'll eat up pretty much all my weekend. So
Eh,
um,
it should be all right though. We should be able to record this next chapter on this next coming week because it's from what I understand it's like a little 20-ish page chapter, which in the grand scheme of things is pretty short, but in the beginning of my fantasy reading journey, I'm like, oh my god, 20-page chapter, and now it's just nothing. It's just crazy, from where you
yeah,
start to where you are now.
yeah, it is. I did have something I wanted to mention to you, Justin.
Ooh, what's that?
Sorry to say I've kind of cheated on you here, and I've started reading another book here. Um, it is not a fantasy book. It is a historical nonfiction book. A lot of my reading time is done when I donate plasma, and so this last time when I was there, we hadn't recorded yet, and so I wasn't going to read ahead in Gardens of the Moon. So I've had a book on my shelf called The Last Full Measure. It is about the first Minnesota Volunteers in the Civil War. So that was the company, the first Minnesota Volunteers, and kind of their travels through the Civil War, and it was pretty bloody. And I'm only like 30 pages into it, but uh, and a couple years ago, I'd seen a Twitter post on a Twins baseball account that I follow. Um, the guy was all worked up about, um, these stupid people flying Confederate flags, and um, I always thought it was stupid too. But now, after seeing his post, it kind of gave me a different perspective on it because he said generally he asked these people, that are flying the Confederate flag. He says, "Do you know anything about the Minnesota First Volunteers?" And they say no every time. He says, "Okay, go check them out, and you should take that flag down." Um, I didn't realize how much history Minnesota had in the Civil War. We were the first state to volunteer troops to the Civil War, and at least from what I've gathered, some historians say that they basically secured the war. There was a battle at Gettysburg or Bull Run. I don't remember which one. I'm not that far in the book yet, but there's a cannon up on a hill shooting and the Confederates flanked them. And the company started with 1,000 guys, and at this point they're down to 250. Um, there's 1,200 Confederates charging to take this hill, and these 250 Minnesotans uh, fixed bayonets and charged these guys, and I think only a handful of them survived, but they held off long enough for reinforcements to come. They held the hill, and if the battle would have went the other way, the war probably would have went the other way. So pretty cool history. Makes me pretty proud to be a Minnesotan. Um, yeah, that's when I can't read Gardens of the Moon. That's what I'm going to be reading for a little bit.
That does sound really cool, and I had no idea that was. I know that Minnesota was pretty involved with the Civil War, but I didn't know that specifically. So that is really cool. But yeah, the Confederate flag needs to die because it is a symbol of hate.
Yeah, I don't know why people cling on to it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
And I mean, like you know, it's been a minute since I've lived in southern Minnesota, but I always thought it was ridiculous, you know, the people that would drive around in these big ass fucking small dick trucks, you know, flying the Confederate flag on the back. It's just like, dude, you're not like you're stupid. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, so the other thing, so that this company of Minnesotans, they I hold the record for the largest amount or highest percentage or whatever you want to call it for casualties in a military unit. That is still a record to this day. I don't remember exactly what the number is, but not too many of these guys came home, and a lot of them were immigrants. There was one thing that in the first 30-ish pages I've read said that God, this is kind of bad. I think what was it, like 1858? I think Minnesota became a state, but anybody who fought from Minnesota was not born as a native Minnesotan. We were too young of a state. So I mean, all these guys were immigrants, and a lot of them didn't even speak English, or maybe not much English, and they put their life on the line for their country and their state.
Which is exactly what the right wing is so against, and they ended up being defeated by the ideology that they still carry, which is kind of ironic to me.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting further into that book, but that book will be secondary to Gardens of the Moon.
It's all good. I mean, I don't. I mean, I guess I appreciate your honesty, but it's not really cheating because I've been reading Red Wall without you. So
Ah, you bastard!
I know,
I'm
I
just
know.
kidding.
I'm like halfway through Matameo right now, so still as good as I remember. I remember that one being my favorite, and so far out of the three that I've read, it is my favorite still.
Nice. I guess, yeah, I'm gonna have to pick those up again, and go through those at some point. I know they're more like kids' books, but that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just more just the content is easier to digest while I'm reading Gardens of the Moon. So it's like it's not so complicated that I'm mixing up the two books by any means. So, but it is just a way for me at least to keep reading while I you know, stay true to not reading ahead as far as Gardens of the Moon is concerned.
I gotcha. Well, anything else going on? Anything
Um,
else you want to talk about?
yeah, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the I guess the Reddit community and um how involved they've been this last week as far as interactions with us. Especially Cannibal Crusader, who is loving our stuff so far and also gave us a quick, I guess, fact check, not really a fact check, but just kind of like a, you know, as you know, The little sections at the beginning of each chapter are called epigraphs. So thanks for letting us know. I had no idea. We had no idea what those were called, but now we've got some terminology for that. So thank you again, Cannibal Crusader.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would have known that, and I will probably forget it before the end of this. So we'll have that to go back to.
I don't think we're reading the epigraph to the beginning of this chapter. So
We don't want to. This one isn't that long, I don't think.
is it? Oh, okay. Yeah, then of course, yeah, we can read it. I'm down for that.
Sure. Okay. Well, you want to jump into it here,
Yeah, let's get started.
or unless there's anything else you want to mention here first.
Nope, not at all. I'm good to go.
All right, then. As you say, our epigraph for chapter 9. Also, our 10th episode here, so that's kind of a cool little milestone for us here. We're into the double digits now.
Yes, we are. That is cool. I don't know why I was so excited about that and then just completely spaced about it just now.
I kind of forgot about it too. All right, so our epigraph for chapter 9. Have you seen the one who stands apart, cursed in ritual, sealing his kind, beyond death the host, amassed and whirling, like a plague of pollen, he stands apart, the first among all, ever veiled in time, yet outcast and alone, a Talan Imus, wandering like a seed unfallen. Lay of Onos Tulen from Tok the Younger. So there's that, and we'll just go right in here to the first section. Tok the Younger is riding his horse. He's 3 days from Pale on the Rivi Plain. He felt like something was wrong. He should have met her 2 days ago. I don't think at this point, or at least I wasn't entirely sure who the her was at that point. Maybe that was obvious to you, but nothing else had been going right either. Bran going missing before he even met Whiskey Jack, and a story about a hound of shadow attacking. He was on a makeshift road through the plain. The Rivi, the inhabitants of the plain, were off with Caladan brood, fighting the Malzan Empire. The plain was empty. Or was it? He saw ravens ahead. When he arrived where the birds circled, he found bodies. He felt something in the air, not quite a taste or a smell, somewhere between. Magic. That's what it was. I hate this, he says. He identifies the bodies as Jakatakan, or elites, and they were massacred. Then he saw what they went up against. Barghast, Ilgris clan, among the strongest of the clans. They were supposed to be 400 leagues north. And I had to look that up because I wanted to know how far 400 leagues was. 1,400 miles about, so a long fucking ways away. The magic drew the Barghast he found. The magic drew the Barghast. He found their dead shaman, sword wound to the throat. The magic was unleashed was Barghast, but not against them. There were survivors, and he found their trail going west. He got back on his horse, readied his bow. He knew he had no chance of sneaking up on the Barghast. On the plain, he knew he'd be seen a long ways off, and they'd have their fucking lances. Maybe he could take one or two out before he became a kebab.
What an interesting way to start off the chapter, right?
So what do
Like
you think of that part?
right back into the suspense, right? I mean, this was kind of what before we went into the subbook of Jerujistan, you know, everything was all just, bloody and gory. Um so yeah, it this first section like immediately drew me in to this chapter. So I want to say after I read this the first time, I continued on for at least 20 or 30 more pages just
Yeah,
to
I
just to see what
liked.
happened.
I really liked just just the openness that I kind of felt reading it. Being out on the plane, I could really just kind of imagine being on a horseback, and you're in maybe not some really tall grass, but like you go outside of town in southern Minnesota, and you got the prairie. That's kind of what I envisioned, some rolling hills, that type of thing. Just that's the kind of obviously this is a little bit more bloody than that, but that's the feel I got.
Well, and it really gives you, I mean, the way that you explain that, it gives one sense of, loneliness, right? And then you all of a sudden come up to this, this scene, this mysterious scene of blood and death, and you're completely by yourself. And as was stated early with the people of the Rivi, the inhabitants of the plane, he speculates that they have been, according to reports, helping Caladan brood. But he also questions, like, oh, well, or maybe they're not. So, and from what I understand, the Rivi were explained as, kind of these like feral savages, you know.
Yeah, kind of nomadic. They follow whatever wildlife is out there
Oh, yeah,
through the
yeah, game
seasons.
trails, right. Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot of not a ton to really dig into this one. This section. I don't think, just kind of setting the scene a little bit here for the next couple parts.
Right. I thought it was cool that Talk was able to identify the Bargas clan by the unique type of tattoos that they have. So I'm guessing that, different Bargas clans have different tattoo identifiers, so to speak, which I thought was interesting to think on like a wider scale.
Yeah, and I guess I don't remember offhand, but I thought it mentioned how, like, roughly how many clans there were, but maybe I am mistaken on that.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't remember specifically. I just remember that the 1400 miles, they're supposed to occupy some range of mountain on like the western side of Genebacus.
Yeah, a long ways away. In any case.
I felt like throughout this chapter I went back to the map quite a bit just to see if I could get a visual of where some of these places were, or where the Bargas specifically in this section were from.
Yeah, I looked at it a couple times too, and I didn't realize 400 leagues was that far, but it gives you a kind of a scale of how big this world really is.
Right. Yes, pretty massive scale, which I like.
Yeah, so I wonder when we'll get to explore more of it.
It's always just like I always feel like I'm just getting little driblets of information, and it's kind of like watching a movie where everything is revealed kind of at the end is the feeling that I often find myself getting. Um, So, and I know that we're still at the very, very beginning of this journey, halfway through the very beginning of the journey, but just that sense of everything will come in due time. So I'm excited for that, but also I'm really enjoying the journey so far.
Yeah, it's been good so far, and I'm sure, like anything else, when we're getting close to the end, things will start tying together.
Right, exactly. But I hope that throughout the journey we get a lot more I guess backstory is probably the best way that I can word it, into some of these cultures that we are being introduced to, and these non-human uh, entities, so to speak.
Yeah,
Well,
I
cool,
think you summed it up pretty good there.
sweet. Let's use that as a segue to move on to our second section here.
Yeah, take it away, buddy.
So bear with us. This one is a bit descriptive, as there's a lot that happens. Knowing that their death was minutes away, Thorn and her two exhausted Marines decided to take their stand at this lone barrow. She has a moment where she wonders what lies within the barrow, as it has to be a millennia old. She tells her Marine with the crossbow to head on top of the rise. The Marine slash soldier to her left would hold that side of Lorne. This soldier standing was beyond Lorne's understanding, as he had taken a lance barb to the shoulder, and blood was protruding down his chest. To the north, she could see four of the six Barghast approaching. They were pulling to flank Lorne and her two Marines. To her right, a lance comes speeding towards her, and behind it, a charging Barghast. Lorne crouches and deflects the lance, deflecting it into the hillside. With her attention back to the four charging Barghast, she hears the soldier at the top of the mound fire his bolt. Hearing a scream to her right, the Barghast who had thrown the lance falls from the bolt. Two more lances are thrown from the oncoming group of four Barghasts. The one thrown at Lorne is recognized as a complete and utter miss. The soldier to her left was unable to dodge completely, and the lance strikes his right thigh, going through to stick into the ground. This soldier is fucked as he is pinned to the ground. In this time, she engages the rushing Barghast, who is coming at Lorne with a short axe. Taking advantage of the reach of her sword, with a fancy flick of her wrist, she is able to bury her sword within the rushing Barghast's chest, bringing him to the ground and Lorne with it, as the weight of the body falling nearly pulls Lorne's sword with the fall. Recovering from this, she is able to see that her crossbowman was engaged, and the soldier to her left was taking on two Barghast. Astonished to see that he had somehow been able to remove the lance from his right thigh, rushing to confront the second Barghast, an axe hits the soldier in the chest, a second swing splitting his skull. The force was enough to break his neck. The soldier falls and Lorne jumps over him to avoid being tripped. In doing so, she crashes into a Barghast, attempting to impale him from behind with her sword. The Barghast was able to slither out of this move and out of the way. Taking an empty swing at the fleeting Barghast, she misses and hits the ground. She dislocates her shoulder, and she lies there with the Barghast raising his axe. She prepares to die. She was in a good position to see then a skeletal hand pierce the ground and grab one of the Barghast's legs and then break it. A flint sword rises and plummets into the dick of the Barghast, his death rising in the air. The sounds of fighting had dispersed, and all she could hear was the rumble of thunder approaching. Rising, with arms swinging to the side, she recognizes the thunder of a Malazan on a horse approaching. She looks around and observes that both her soldiers are dead, and the remaining Barghasts have bolts sticking out their backs. She regards the skeletal figure as he is standing there, holding the broken leg and the sword with the skewered Barghast on it. The sword peeked out from the dead Barghast's throat. Lauren inquires about where this figure had been, as she was expecting it days ago. Just then, Tak the Younger approaches from behind Lorne and dismounts his horse and joins Lorne at her side. Seeing the massive figure, in exclamation, he reveals that it is a Talan Imas in front of them. In a rage, she yells at the Talan Imas and explains that she knew that they were near, as this would be the only reason why a Barghast shaman would have been in the area, and they must have used a warren to get there. Surprised at Lauren's outburst, Tak studies the Tlanimas and recalls that the last time he saw one was 8 years ago in the Seven Cities. Lauren demands where this Tlanimas has been and what his name is. He is revealed as Onos Tulin. Onos continues on with his more formal name, to which Lauren rather rudely interrupts. She has a moment of weariness and starts to sag and collapse a bit. Tak was able to secure a support for her, Tak was able to secure and support her, taking her to a nearby grassy knoll. The Talani Mass is standing where they left him, but his back is turned and he is seen kind of studying the barrow. As Tak The younger takes scraps of fabric from the dead Barghast to use as a sling for Lorne's shoulder. They talk about Tok's father. Lorne makes a comment about the Empress regretting Tok's father's death. Tok simply says that he has disappeared. Tok at this point brings up the Talani mask to Lorne. Lorne simply puts it that they come and go as they please and that they are needed for her mission. As Tok puts the sling on Lorne and begins to brief Lorne on all that has happened, Ganoes and his disappearance, and then Whiskey Jack and company leaving Pale without Ganoes, damn is all that Lorne says, and then is helped to her feet. She asks Tok to find her sword. Finding the sword, Tok recognizes it as an Otaral sword and informs Lorne that he has found the dead Barghast shaman. Lorne begins to explain that the Otaral sword is familiar to Tok because he is of the Seven Cities, and begins to tell him that out here it is not as well known and that she would like to keep it that way. Tok then inquires about Lorne's horse, as otherwise her walk back to Pale would take days. Lorne explains that her horse was killed by some disease that the Barghast shaman had unleashed. She also commands Tok to occupy her to the city of Pale, as she says that she needs him. With some hesitation over sharing a horse, he is obligated to hop on, as Lorne has commanded he do so. As they are about to leave, Onos approaches Lorne and tells her that the barrow has yielded truth, and we are on the right path. To Tok, he had no fucking clue what was happening, but he did know that Lorne knew exactly what it had meant. He shivers at the thought and starts to itch his eye. Lorne and Tok are on their way to Pale.
That was a pretty badass fight, though. I mean, the guy taking a lance through the leg, being stuck to the ground and fights him off, and he still ends up dying. But was I feel like a Spartan death. Like died fighting. Even though he was injured, he wasn't going down without taking out everybody he could.
Yeah, and I know it wasn't summarized, so to speak, but I know that I believe it was in the previous section, a little bit of kind of that exact culture among the Jakatan Marines is that like that's kind of I get like a like Game of Thrones Unsullied type of vibe, as well as like the Spartan thing that you're talking about. Just that like battle is my life and I will die for the empire, uh, type of mentality. But they also are, super good warriors. So to come upon a huge pile of them as well as whatever they were fighting,
Yeah. Also, I thought the IMS. I think those are going to be pretty cool. I hope we get to see more of those. Just from like how they like. Sounds like they just kind of travel through the earth. Is kind of what I got out of it. I'm not sure what you thought, but
yeah, no,
um,
yeah,
almost
same.
makes me think of like the graboids from Tremors. You ever watch that movie from
I
like
don't
the early '90s or whenever it came out?
I don't think I've seen Tremors. I know.
Oh my god.
Shame on me. But
I think
I
they made a few sequels, but like the first one's the only one worth watching.
okay. Well, maybe I'll have to whip that up. I've been looking for some new stuff to watch, so I'll check that out. But I'm familiar with the Tremors concept, and yeah, I agree. I would associate how the Talana mass would move around like that.
They're just not giant worms.
Right, right. Um, it, I thought I loved this whole section. I probably read this chapter at least 2.5 times, and then a third going through at least the summaries that I had to do. But I thought it was funny as Onos drives this sword up from the ground and in between what was described as his hips, but you got to go through the nuts and the dick before you get to the hips. But
Yeah, he really busted a nut, didn't he?
knee flap. Yeah, yeah. But uh, Erickson says his death rising in the air, and I just I thought it was really good comedic horror. It was a very beautiful way to describe the spark ass dying.
Yeah, I can see it just kind of almost like it's going up a pole, into the air. Pretty cool scene for sure.
Yeah, and a really good way to like associate a visual as you're reading that. So, um, and from what I've gathered about the Talana Mass is that they're super strong and they're huge. They're big, and I know that. I guess it was cool just how Erickson describes them, and he spent about a half of a page describing the Talana Mass, and then besides the sorcery, uh, outside of sorcery, the fact that these guys are essentially the living dead, uh, there's 300 years of decay that has taken place on at least this particular one that was observed. So, I can only imagine that they weren't all raised at the same time. I mean, I could be way off there, but I would imagine that, you know, the undead are maybe even constantly raised. I guess I don't know where everything starts or where it begins, but I'm excited to see how their backstory kind of unfolds throughout the series.
Yeah, we keep getting introduced to new things as we go here, so I hope we can keep everything straight in our minds and as we talk about it, and hopefully it pays off, and we get some more information.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I also think that like just I don't know about you, but I'm getting a lot of familiarity with this book and how he writes. So it's not as jarring as it once was. The presenting of new characters or new information.
At least not yet. We'll have to see what happens, I guess, as we go here.
That is true.
Uh, One of the guy I've been talking to on Facebook, Evan Gould, give you a little shout out there. We were talking a few days ago, last week, and we were at about the same spot in the book, and now he's already finished with it now, and now he's moved on to Dead House Gates. I was like, damn, dude, that was fast. But he said, I think like chapter like 13ish or somewhere about there, he said he could understand why people would get frustrated with the way it was written. He said it started to get a little bit confusing, but it must pay off because he got through it awfully quick, and I was on to book 2 already.
Dang, he is plowing through that then.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm excited to get to Dead House Gates. I purchased the book, I don't know, maybe a week or two ago, and I'll hold it. I won't like go through the pages or anything, but like I'll look at the cover art and just get excited.
Yeah, it does have. I like looking at the covers too, but I don't want to read the backs to the books.
Yep, nope, I just look at the cover. Yep. But what do you think of this introduction to the Otero sword?
I don't know. It's like a magic breaker sword, I guess. It's kind of what I got, what I
Yeah.
gathered.
Lauren explains that the sword is made of ore, some type of ore that kills magic and mages. Um, she also begins to explain that the sword, for whatever reason, doesn't work though on the Tilana mass, as their warrens are similar to that of the Jaghut and the fork roll assail, which, from what I've gathered just in this brief section, is that the Talana Mass, the Jaghut, and the Fork Roll Assail are Elder Blood. So we know that the sword doesn't work on Elder Blood. So process of elimination would tell us that the Barghast are not Elder Blood. And it seems to be just confined to these three races.
So I'm going to assume that these swords are pretty rare also. It almost feels like Valyrian steel, from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I
To
got
some extent, like they're not very common. The rich or the noble houses or the rich houses that are probably, I would guess, would be the people who have them. I wouldn't think a commoner, talk the younger type guy or one of the Marines. They're not going to have this type of sword, I don't think.
not at all. I think that Talk, from what I understand from the section, is familiar with them because he was able to identify it as he was finding the sword. But it's one of those things where there may be places that are familiar with them, like for example the Seven Cities, but outside of I would imagine a huge populace, it is relatively unknown. Um,
Yeah, I guess, as a claw, maybe he's probably seen these things, so that'd probably be why he's aware of them and knows what to look for, I guess.
right, yeah, because he's got that little bit of privy, being a claw. So, um, did you catch the part about the Onos talking to the barrow? Remember how he was just standing there looking at the barrow?
Yeah.
Um, because he tells Lorne before they depart that the barrow has yielded truth, and this also kind of brings like a little bit about maybe alongside of traveling underground, they also can talk to the dead even if they're not alive. Is the sense that I got from it, is that they're able to talk to what I would imagine just people in a cemetery or a barrow and get information from these unrisen dead people.
I did not think about that.
So, and do these dead people, do they have some type of like, you know, uh story or information from beyond the dead that aids Lorne or the Talana Mass into their next ventures?
I would imagine you could probably get quite a bit of information, if they knew what happened to them, I suppose.
Right, because just the little experience that we have with the afterlife, which just came from Canoes, is that they have to pass through Hood's Gate, so they have to be in some type of realm of some type of afterlife realm or world, which may
Well,
privy
I
them to
think
information.
I think we know that there are other worlds in this story, right? I'm pretty sure they've made mention or reference to that, traveling through the Warrens and stuff.
Yeah,
I don't
which
know if that really had anything to do. I think my mind went in a different direction there. Sorry.
no, I think I follow you. I get where you're going, but I think it's cool that we're getting little stints of you know a creature that has been mentioned before, but this is kind of like our really like first-hand encounter with one. But on the opposite side of all the cool shit that they can seem to do, as far as this section is concerned, I also really got like a feeling of him being like dumpy. He just kind of like stands there with like the dead Barghast on his sword and a broken leg in his other hand and just holds them. He doesn't really do anything with them, he just holds it, you know?
So is he like the Eeyore of Malazan?
Yeah, just kind of, or like Dopey from Snow White. Just yeah. I just got a sense of that. Like so. And we
I
also
can see that for sure.
yeah. And we also get another kind of experience with him later on in the section, which affirms that. So just kind of like my initial thoughts on Onos.
I think he's got a cool name.
Yeah, he does have a cool name. But
Got that going for him at least.
yeah, yeah, we'll see. We'll see as we reveal more of this chapter. But yeah, cool little section. Loved it. Got right back into the blood and guts of this book.
Yeah, back into the action for sure.
All right, well, feel like we did a pretty good job wrapping that section up. What do you say about moving on to the next one?
Sure. We go back to Gnos and Tattersail here for a little bit. So Bran knew he was being hidden. The only people who gave him any answers were Tattersail, since she was stuck, and the asshole Pinocchio or Hairlock. Bran had some memory of a hound in the room and that it wanted to kill Tattersail, but he managed to stop it, even though he didn't really remember. He didn't think the hound was dead. Asshole Pinocchio ignored him for the most part, but when he did talk, it was a threat to kill him. Sale being there, even sick, was enough to keep him from acting on those threats. He wondered where Whiskey Jack went. Maybe left without him? How would that affect Adjunct Lauren's plan? Asshole Pinocchio wanted Sale dead badly, but either wasn't able to do it himself or was too scared to try. Bran was getting impatient, and if Sale didn't wake soon, he would take his chances and leave, hoping he could find Tok the Younger and avoid Teicheren and his lackeys. Sale finally woke and looked at him. She said, "I heard the coin drop, Captain." Bran's face went pale. And Justin, if you're looking at this, I capitalized pale.
I can see that.
Like
Yeah,
the name of the city.
I think a little smiley face afterwards.
Yeah. So Bran's face went pale. A coin? A spinning coin? The voice of the gods, of dead men and women. Howls of hounds, all pieces of my memories, torn tapestry. That's one of Bran's internal thoughts. A spinning coin spins no more. How much do you remember? Not much, Bran says. The puppet will not even tell me your name. So, as I was kind of writing this, I mean, as a reader, we know their names, but Bran doesn't even know Tattersail's name up until this point. She gives her name and that she's been in the company of Whiskey Jack and his squad, and that she was supposed to take care of him until he was better. Bran says that they're even now and wants to know what comes next. Bran says that's ridiculous because they don't have a damn clue. He woke up, a half dead witch and a talking puppet for company. Doesn't know where his command is. Did they leave for Darujistan already? Sale isn't sure, but she knows Whiskey Jack wanted him alive because they need to find out who tried to kill him. And, I'm pretty sure Bran wants to know who tried to kill him also. He had some surprising feelings towards Sale, which we'll find more about later. He didn't remember ever feeling that way before. Says he doesn't remember anything of the attack, but he thinks that there were two attackers and that he had heard a coin spinning. Sale says a god intervened and gave life back. Bran does seem aware that he's being used and that it's not really anything new to him. Sale says Whiskey Jack was right. He's not just a new captain, but something more. Bran was worried about that. He asks what her role is, working for a god. She says probably not, and that she didn't do much for him. It was open. Bran seems surprised, but vaguely recalls his encounter with the twins. He says he bought his sword 3 years ago, but never used it until the dog. You recall that, Sale? Asks Sale. He does. Bran says he named the sword the day he got it. He named it Chance, which is kind of an odd name. And Sale agrees. She doubts that even Open could have imagined the sword's first action would be against a Hound of Shadow. She asks if he's met Hairlock and tells him to be careful around him. And that feels out of place to me because he's already mentioned Hairlock to her. So I didn't understand that. I don't know if that was just like a continuity gaffe or what that was. But she warns him to be careful around Hairlock all the same because he's vowed to kill him being Paran. She doesn't know his role in things, but Paran thought it might be a lie. He hasn't seen the puppet in 2 nights. He thinks that Sale's been out for 6 days, but he's not 100% sure. He wants to leave, but Sale says she still needs him because Hairlock is afraid of his sword and not her. If he leaves, Hairlock will kill her. He fights his feelings because his mission is more important than anything. She says the puppet kept him in the dark and lied to him. Paran didn't think this was the whole truth, but he felt that if there was a lie, it was more likely to come from Hairlock than Tattersale. He says they need to cut the shit. They have a common enemy.
Yeah, I thought
That is
this.
the end of that section.
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting interaction. I mean, it's obviously their first, but there seems to be some common ground being taken place between these two characters, um, and I think that the whole if she asks, the whole. I think that what you may be referring to as like a continuity gap. I don't believe that Parrot actually tells Tattersale about Hairlock. I think that was all just like not necessarily internal dialogue, but just him talking to himself, kind of a thing at the beginning of the chapter when he's you know the author is giving us the perspective of Hairlock while Tattersale is out. I'm not
I got
explaining
you.
that right, but yeah.
I get what you're meaning though.
But it's interesting to know that asshole puppet, right, is essentially afraid of Chance, his sword, because it essentially killed a hound. I mean, those three are
Or
the
did some
one,
serious damage.
or did some serious damage to what Hairlock, from what I understand, from the previous section with his meeting with Quick Ben, was that he doesn't understand how this ordinary sword, could essentially pierce the hound's magic. So it's kind of cool to kind of see a lot of things forming and taking place. Um, connecting to events. But yeah, I do think it's interesting that he named his sword Chance, and then its first use is basically used on a reaction to Hairlock, right? Because we as the reader know that the real reason why the hound is quote unquote after Tattersale is because he was chasing Hairlock through the Warrens because Hairlock delved too far.
Right.
So it's I don't know, it's like watching things from an outside perspective as the reader, because to the majority of this chapter everybody thinks that the hound was after Tattersale, which we as the reader know is not the case. And then for, Hairlock to be afraid of the sword, which is essentially the reason why he won't kill Ganoz and he won't kill Tattersale, is because Ganoz is with the sword, so he can't go after, Ganoz because he would get slaughtered. So I'm wondering if maybe, now that I'm thinking about it, does Hairlock think that this is some type of Otarel sword?
That's kind of what I was wondering too. I think that there's probably a good chance of that.
But yeah, I just think it's cool. This first interaction with her, And, I know that he has a moment of like, I'm thinking about, or I'm noticing and observing this woman's mannerisms and the things that she say have to be true because she has no motivation to kill him. Whereas Hairlock is just going to say a bunch of shit to try to manipulate the situation. And he's mad as fuck. So,
That's just what he does. He's kind of a little dickhead.
yeah, little fucking asshole. Little puppet asshole.
I liked in this part how you could see that Pran, he's becoming conflicted. He's developing some feelings for Tattersale, but he knows he shouldn't, and that he should be staying focused on his mission at hand.
Right? It kind of has like this internal dilemma. So, because, he wants to believe Tattersale. And for the most part, I do feel that he does believe what she is saying. Although he has a little bit of like, skepticism around it. But it has to be it has to be more true than anything else he's been told. So there's a little bit of admiration for Tattersale as this information and this conversation between the two happens.
Right.
Cool. What do you say about moving on?
Yeah, I think was this I think this next one was another longer section, right?
Yep, it's a bit long, so bear with me as I summarize the events of
Get
this section.
everybody listening, get your hot chocolate or whatever you're drinking and get ready. Sit
Right.
down for a minute.
Yep, get your popcorn. Grab your popcorn. All right. So Tak the Younger and Lorne are waiting at the gate entrance to the city of Pale. Lorne makes the observation that the army is unhappy and can sense their anger churning. 10,000 soldiers were on the edge of revolt, waiting for their high fist Dujak's orders. Lorne recognizes that the situation isn't eased by the tension of Taishran countermanding high fist Dujak. Thinking to herself, this she could handle. However, the one thing that did tug at her was the tale of the Hound of Shadow. Lauren was eager to meet with Taishran and the sorceress Tattersale. That name, for some reason, ringing a bell she couldn't quite put her finger on. The gate swings open, and a marine leads a horse through the gate. Dismounting from Tak's horse, Lauren sees High Fist Dujek also walking through the gate. Dismissing Tak the Younger, Lauren and Dujek head for a walk through the city. As they are walking through the throng, Dujek tells Lauren about Taishran wanting to publicly call the nobility. Lauren's initial reaction is merely that it is Empire policy to do so. Dujek responds in question to this by telling her that 9 out of 10 of the nobility were to be killed, including children. Lauren responds to this by agreeing that maybe that is a bit excessive. And approaching the 3-story headquarters in Pale, Lauren starts to tell Dujek about her mission, to which Dujek interrupts, saying that he didn't want to know. Lauren has then the thought that Dujek was being pushed, and Taishran was the one doing the pushing, and kind of questions like, what is the High Mage up to here? Lauren offers to Dujek that she will speak to Taishran interfering and that she has his back if he so needs it. Dujek at this point politely takes ownership of his own problems. And as they enter the 3-story headquarters, Dujek asks Lauren if she will permit the excessive culling of the nobility, stating that battle tactics can be applied to any situation, and then takes a stab at Taishran, saying that the High Mage was no tactician. Lauren notices guards posted outside all the doors in the building, but eventually they reach their destination, a room with a large table in the middle, with maps strewn about. Dujek tells Lauren that Taishran has been made aware of her arrival, and if she has any questions about recent events, then she should take that opportunity and ask now. Lauren asks about the Moranth, and they have a brief conversation about them. This conversation concludes, and Dujek asks when he is receiving more legions. Lauren replies that he will receive 2 and begins to explain to Dujek the Empress's plan for all of their moving armies and alliances. Dujek says that the Empress is a fool and proposes a restructure to the current plan, one that forces Caladan Brood into Dujek's incoming forces and leaves the Prince Kaaz, commander of the Crimson Guard, on the wrong side of what is called Fox Pass, unable to assist Caladan Brood. Realizing that Dujek was being academic, studying the map itself, she failed to see what Dujek was talking about, but she allows this plan to proceed anyway. Lauren moves the conversation to that of the Hound, thus recalling her own memories of the slaughter of Ikito Khan. Lauren breaks away from this conversation and asks Dujek if Tattersail is a capable sorceress. Dujek replies that she was the only cadre mage to escape Tashran's assault on Moonspawn. Dujek and Lauren have a conversation about Tattersail. As a result of this, Lauren remembers how she knows Tattersail's name. Growing weary from this thought, Dujek, mistakenly thinking it's because of her dislocated shoulder, offers her a healer and a goblet of wine. Lauren is heard mumbling 9 years and mouse. At this point, the door bangs open and both look to see Tashran enter the room. Tashran immediately starts blowing up and accusing Dujek of setting the Hall of Records on fire, stating that the inside looked like an oven. Lauren intervenes between the two men, and she gets Tashran to inform them that the Hall of Records was the building holding all of the city's census info. Dujek tells them that he knows nothing of this event and that his troops are at Tashran's disposal. Looking at Dujek, she excuses him and asks if there will be a dinner later that evening, to which she would like Tattersail to attend. As the doors close, Lauren gives Tashran a tongue lashing for this lack of subtlety. After their conversation of Tashran's failure, he simply tells her that this is not where his strengths lie and asks to be dismissed. Lauren considers it, but this leads to thoughts that mages never commanded loyalty, but rather fear. But there had been one mage long ago that commanded loyalty, and that was the Emperor. This thought progresses Lauren to say the following to Tashran. And I really like this, so I included the whole quote. She says, "High Mage, we all agreed on one thing. The old guard must disappear. All who stood with the Emperor and still cling to his memory will ever work against us, whether consciously or unconsciously. Dujek is the exception, and there are a handful of others like him. As for the others, they have to die. The risk lies in alerting them to that fact. If we are too open, we may end up with an insurrection the size of which could destroy the Empire." Tashran responds to this by telling her that outside of Tattersail and Dujek, everyone has been cleared out, and that Whiskey Jack and company are all hers. Lauren replies by saying, "With luck." This makes Tashran wince, and he begins to explain that through his readings of the Deck of Dragons, that Opan has entered the fray, and that Opan involves Jerujistan. He continues to say that he believes that Tattersail and Whiskey Jack are in cahoots with each other. Lauren asks of Gano's Paran's whereabouts, to which Tashran says that someone is either hiding him or that he is dead, but hasn't passed through Hood's Gate. Lauren asks if it's potentially Tattersail and begins to ask how strong she really is. Tashran shrugs and tells Lauren that he's also curious as to this Gano's involvement, and tells Lauren that Tattersail is strong enough to be a high mage, although he didn't think it would be possible for her, only because he would have difficulty managing such a thought. Lauren simply suggests that maybe Tattersail had help fighting off the Hound, and continues to tell Taishren to think of this possibility, but also that the Empress wants him to continue his efforts, not just against just not against Dujek. Like, continue doing what you need to do, but just leave Dujek out of it. Instructing Taishren to stay the fuck out of Dujek's way in his occupation of Pale, and that he is to inform Dujek of Opon entering the fray so Dujek can prepare his plans for a god. Lorne escorts Taishren to the door, and he makes his exit. Lorne walks back and sinks into a chair. Her mind traveled back 9 years. Sounds and experiences of that of a child. A particular night in the mouse. She whispers the word Tattersail.
There's a lot to that.
Fuck, dude. Like, when I read this chapter, I'm like, everything clicked into place for me. I don't know how you feel, but everything just clicked into place.
Tell me what you think.
So the that quote that I read, well, not quote, but the statement that Lorne makes about the Emperor being the only high mage to command loyalty instead of fear. This is what I believe is kind of the culmination of everything that we've read up to this point. This kind of explains to me every question, speculation, guess on what is actually happening as far as the main plot of this book. And it's because he commanded loyalty and not fear. So basically everybody that was in the like loyal to the emperor, like we hear that statement a lot. Everybody who was in loyalty of the emperor, Dujek, Whiskey Jack, some of the other characters that we've been mentioned that I'm forgetting at the moment, they want to eradicate them because of the emperor's loyalty. So it is a direct threat to Lucine, who is a usurper. So that is why Taishren is doing what he's doing, and that's why he did what he did at the assault of Moonspawn. Is it confirms that that was 100% intentional, because that is what he is
I already
supposed
kind
to
of
be
felt
doing.
that way, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but this just added that, like, yes, like this is where it was supposed to be. This is the end result. So that's just what it did for me. Is it just was like, yes, it makes sense now.
It's all coming together here.
Yeah. So I really loved this chapter. But some of the other things that, again, I didn't do it justice in the summary. One, because there was so much that happened, and to add this into the summary, I think would have just made it 10 times longer. But we get a little sense into Dujak's like genius a little bit, because he proposes a different way of kind of eliminating Caladan Brood's threat against the Empire by proposing a restructure to what Lorne had explained to him. Yeah, I found myself going back to the map again to try to see if I could pick out where Dujek was talking about forcing Caladan Brood south so that he could meet Dujek, but his reinforcements were on the wrong side of the pass, Fox's pass, by utilizing some of the other Empire's allies, while they still had them. Because I know that in the conversation about the Moranth, Dujek kind of explains further to Lorne that he had trouble getting the gold Moranth to fight Caladan Brood, as from the gold Moranth's perspective, they think Brood is honorable. And then Lorne kind of makes the association between, the momentary lapse of loyalty with the gold Moranth to an event with the green and the blue. I think that there's definitely, the Empire is going to lose some alliances.
Yeah, I'm not. I guess myself, I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen. It feels like things are definitely coming into focus, but I mean, who knows really what's going to happen with open and how all that stuff will fall,
Yeah,
and whatever other gods come into play here.
right. Yeah, and it just there's so many like unanswered things, but at the same time, I feel like a sense of clarity. And specifically in this section, there's a lot of comments, or I guess what I would call Lorne's internal thoughts about loyalty. And we see this at the very beginning of the section when High Fist Dujek come like meets Lorne and Talk at the gate. As soon as like Talk sees High Fist Dujek, he like immediately snaps a salute. Lauren saw that, and she has this thought about whose Talk loyalty really belonged to. And I think that this thought kind of caters to the idea that Dujek has a following and a loyal supporters, right? Like everybody in Pale will pretty much do anything for Dujek, which ties into one of the other things that Lauren notices. Guards posted outside all of the doors in this headquarter, right? And Lauren kind of suspects that this is because of the Hound. And, in questioning in the section, Dujek responds that there have been a number of assassination attempts on his life. But he continues to say that the guards weren't even ordered to be stationed there. They just volunteered uh, themselves. And Dujek to Lorne makes a statement loyal to a fault. But then Lorne has a thought again to herself, well, like loyal to who? And continuing her thoughts of the Seven Cities soldiers being sent elsewhere, because if they knew their homeland was on the brink of rebellion, that news could tip the scales on Genovacus. Lauren tells us, the reader, that her and the Empress are aware of this, and it was becoming more abundant that Taishran was the problem here.
I think you summed it up pretty good.
Yeah, I really, really liked this uh this section.
Yeah, it was definitely a pretty heavy, not in the sense of like battle or whatever, but it was a heavy section.
Yeah, and even continuing on the heaviness in Dujek and Lauren's conversation about Taishran's assault on Moonspawn, I'm convinced that Dujek has this air of sarcasm about it. And I think that Lauren is picking up on that sarcasm, which kind of brings it back to that quote that I read, is that if they're open to the fact that they're trying to do something about those that were loyal to the emperor, that is what kind of ties that into her basically like bitching out Taishran about how much he's fucking up, because Dujek is and all of the characters are skeptical about what's going on. They don't have anything confirmed like we do. They're still acting off of suspicion. Tattersail, Whiskey Jack, Quick Ben, Kalam, they know something is up, but they don't have anything as concise as this.
No, no, I think you're right about that for sure.
And I mean, some examples of Taishran Tayshiren's fuck ups, and when Lauren is bitching her out or bitching him out, is Lauren comments on how Tayshiren is taking on essentially the craftiest bastard the Empire military that has ever existed, and that Tayshiren is being eaten alive, according to Lauren. She also brings up the Empress's reluctance to allow Tayshiren to take over the assault of Moonspawn. Tayshiren at some point is able to interject that Dujek is simply one man. And Lauren's response to this is the direct correlation to that of what she observed in Dujek's soldiers' loyalty. She says that he isn't one man, but rather 10,000 and potentially more as the years progress. She ends the 10 lashing by saying that they would be traitors if they allowed Dujek to switch sides. And that meant not insulting Dujek's loyalty to the Empire. So there's all this conflicting stuff, right? Like they don't want to piss Dujek off because of his loyalty to the Empire / Emperor. But at the same time, that's kind of their problem. They're trying to eradicate everybody who has been loyal to the Emperor because that's what the Emperor commanded. But they need Dujek because he's a genius.
I don't see how this is going to go over well, you know?
I don't either. And I don't know where Dujek is going to go. Like, at this point in the story, like, I think that he knows that something is up, but he's so much in a cloud of mystery. But I do think that this may be a little bit of foreshadowing. Is that I feel like eventually he's going to be pushed to the side of Whiskey Jack and Tattersail.
Well, we'll just have to keep reading and eventually we'll find out, right?
Read and find out. Yes.
Rafo.
Yeah, I loved this section. I can't say that enough. It just answered so many questions for me.
I did this overall. This chapter as a whole, I did like it a lot. There was, like I said, I like the callbacks that we're going to get here pretty quick.
Right. And do you find it astonishing that the Emperor was magical? Like you caught that, right?
I guess. I mean, I don't know how much it matters.
I mean,
that probably helped him become the emperor, I would guess.
But from what I understand, he's the one who raised the Talani Mass. And also, there was that part in I think it was like chapter 2 or 3, where they talk about how Moonspawn had retreated once before, and that nobody knew how the Emperor did it. So
magic would make sense then.
Magic very well could make sense. So I mean, think about it, like a really strong sorcerer that could potentially convince Moonspawn not to attack whatever it was attacking. I can't remember. But also loyalty, like not fear, loyalty.
Yeah, it's a totally different thing to rule out of fear than to rule because people have loyalty to you that isn't fear based, because you've been compassionate to the people, or just generally a good ruler versus being a dickhead.
Right. I immediately go to like the workplace when I read this. Like there's a difference between a manager and a leader. You know what I mean? Like a manager is just going to tell you what you need to do, but a leader is going to show you and help you do what you need to do.
Yeah, they're going to be out there with you doing the shit work.
Exactly. But yeah, I digress. I feel like I've said what I needed to say about this section. So if you don't have anything else to add, let's move on.
No, you did a great job. It was I don't know, that was probably the longest section that we've had so far, or it's got to be up there anyways.
Yep.
So it fell into your lap, and you did a great job.
Thanks, man.
All right. Tattersail finally had the energy to leave her bed. She made it to the window and was looking outside. The city was being plundered in the name of resupply. Nobility and their families have been ousted from their homes. Um, that made me think of why we have the Third Amendment here in the United States, not being booted out of our houses for troops. I can't imagine they were real thrilled with that. So, repairing the outer walls and, quote, clearing the moon rain. And I know in our notes, I was like, what the fuck is that? And then you responded that, it was probably the pieces of moon spawn that fell during the siege, and makes total sense. At the time when I read that, I was like, totally over my head. Did not catch that. So, she had missed the river of bodies during, quote, cleanup. She had seen it before, didn't want to see it again. Things seemed to be getting back to normal ish. Malazan healers went throughout the city, purging the plague and other common illnesses. It doesn't really sound that bad um, on that end of things, I guess. If you're not nobility, if you're just a common folk, soon the culling would begin. Nobles would be executed publicly. Recruiting would increase, selling vengeance to the common folk. And there's a quote here that I liked, and I included it. A sword in such hands completed the conspiracy and included all players in the hunt for the next victim to the cause, the Empire's cause. She had seen it 100 times throughout. Excuse me, ahead of myself here. She thought of the bridge burners and Whiskey Jack and how hard he was pushed, but she thinks and believes he will win out at the end and see the end of the Empire. Quick Ben and Kalam doing what they could do to ease Whiskey Jack's burden. She connected to all of them except Sorry deeper than she thought. She tried not to think about Sorry at all. And lastly, Paran. What was she supposed to do with him? They didn't talk much, and neither trusted each other very much. There was a very clear attraction between them. Hairlock showed up that morning and was excited. He wouldn't tell them, but she suspected he found a way out of Pale to Darujistan. There was a visitor at the door. Sale was able to hide Paran with some magic. It was a Marine at the door asking how she was feeling. She's been requested from Dujek for dinner. Taishren, Tak the Younger, and Adjunct Lorne would also be there. Sale says she'll be there. Sale figures out that Paran is working for Lorne. Quick Ben's suspicion had been correct, that there was a plan to kill the squad, and she wondered if her life was safe. So a lot of it, and I didn't do a very good job in summarizing this, but the descriptions of like the bodies just being more or less wheelbarrowed out of town to be taken care of, disposed of, and uh, it's pretty grim and dark, and yeah, she's seen it before and she didn't want to see it again. So she's been through this mess before. It isn't pretty, but it's just how things are.
And some of that, well, all of that, um, moment of I don't want to do this again comes full fold in the next section. But I think that this section is purely just about like a decision that Tattersail has to make with all of the pieces that she is aware of, like knows his relationship with Lauren, as that was revealed at the end of the section. Quick Ben, Kalam, Whiskey Jack. Uh, I really feel like this section is really meant to make the reader feel like she's kind of at a crossroad, right? Like kind of similar to what we experience with the Circle Breaker in some of the Jerujistan books, sub books. Um, and I feel like at this point she kind of makes her decision.
I Yeah, I guess to me, I think it becomes a little bit more clear later on, but I agree.
Yeah, because I mean, from this section, she's essentially making all these observations and having these internal thoughts while she's essentially at a windowsill looking out into the city of Pale. But
Yeah, just kind of, it's. I think it's like you said. She's looking out and just kind of pondering.
but you
What's next.
right, yeah, and the whole Whiskey Jack or not Whiskey Jack, the evil puppet being excited. I don't recall that. What was he excited about? Because I can only assume that
Um,
this is him coming back from his, you know, meeting with Quick Ben from the previous chapter. But I don't recall what he was excited about.
I guess I don't remember exactly either, but I feel like that Tattersall's suspicions are accurate. I think we find that out here in the next section or something. Next couple, anyways.
Yeah. Oh, right. He had found a way to Jerujistan.
Right.
Fair enough. Yeah, I liked how she has these moments of, deep internal thought on all of the things that have played out so far, what she's currently observing, as well as like her next steps.
Later on in this, I, I kind of I wonder how genuine her next steps are, but I guess we can talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, that is true. So, kind of seems like this section is a little bit forthcoming as to what's to happen.
The only other thing I would add is just when she hides Paran, I didn't put it in there, but she says something about nobody will see you or hear you, and just that I thought it was cool that she could disguise somebody, and obviously we've seen that with um, Crone, or Crone being disguised too from
Oh,
God, the words
Farouk.
right on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it right now. Baruch, but yeah, what is he's not a was he a mage, but he was something
He's an
else,
alchemist.
right? Alchemist. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, but other than that, that was about all I had there.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. I mean, at this point, they have had little conversation, and and the trust that she feels from him, yeah, maybe a little bit shaky, but at the end of the day, she still hides him, which I think further from Paran's perspective just reaffirms what we already know about their interactions so far, and that she seems to be genuine towards
That's a good point.
at least Paran's perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. Well, um, I guess that's all I had to say. In addition,
That's perfect again.
sweet. All right. So before we move on, we got another long one. So start up your fireplace, grab some popcorn, grab your favorite stuffed animal to snug with, and here we go.
Yeah, you got kind of stuck with all the long sections here this time around. I'm sure it'll even out eventually.
It's all good. It's all good. I just want to do a good job.
And that you do.
Thanks, man. Talk Talk the Younger makes his way through Pale's headquarters, shows his invite to a guard, and then is allowed to proceed. Grimly, he wonders if anyone would be able to keep their food down, as the ghastly sight of his scar may upset their appetites. He approaches the set of double doors and enters the room. Taishran, Dujek, and Lorne are all turned to regard him. He bows and approaches them as they stand at the fireplace. Lorne thanks him for coming and informs him that they are waiting for one more guest. Dujek scratches his arm stump, and makes a quip about the craze of having to scratch. I'll go into that later, but I thought that was funny. Grabbing a goblet of wine, he observes that antisocial Taishran is just staring into the fire. Lauren asks Tak about the well-being of his horse, to which Tak replies with another statement of comedic gold. Lorne, Tak, and Dujek have a conversation about the events with the Barghast, and Tak is complimented on his impressive archery. This compliment leads Dujek to comparing Tak to that of Tak's father. Dujek states that Tak's father was a man that he had missed, to which Tak agrees. An awkward silence ensues after this, and then the double doors open and their attention swings to the door. In enters Tattersail. Lorne is heard gasping, and then states that they've met before. Doubting that Tattersail remembers because she was that of an 11-year-old girl when they had last met. Tattersail tells Lorne that she rarely hangs out with the company of children, and that this is not likely. And then, with a controlled rage, Lorne begins to weave the tale of the mouse quarter. Burned to ash. A week after Tattersail had swept through, the survivors were moved to Mock's Hold, where Lorne's mother, father, and her brother had died. Dujek is said to have been studying Lorne with a mask of serenity but storm in his eyes. Taishren looks upon the sorceress with a face of realization of some kind. With a tremble, Lorne composes herself and states that an explanation was in order. Turning to Dujek, she unfolds the story more. Tattersail was a recruit in the cadre of mages. They were in Malaz City waiting for their new commander when the Master of the Claw issued an edict against sorcery. They were stated as indiscriminate as they were sent into the old city, the Mouse. Turning her gaze back to Tattersail, she calls her out, stating that Tattersail was one of those mages, telling her that was the last night with her family and that she remembers that night well, specifically the blood and the screams. Absolving her stare with the adjunct, she turns to Dujek and explains that they had lost control and the very next day resigned from the officer corps and was then posted with another army. Lorne gathers herself Tattersail gathers herself after explaining this to Dujek and Lorne and volunteers that a court be held and that she'll claim no defense for herself and will accept execution as a penalty. Lorne simply says that this action is acceptable. Dujek intervenes and says that no, this is absolutely not acceptable. Lorne, with her imaginative big dick, reminds Dujek of her rank. Dujek doesn't deny her rank or her right to execute persons for crimes committed in the name of the Empire. He then says the following: "Then you must include me. Indeed, I believe High Mage Taishren also has his share of horror committed on the Emperor's behalf. And finally, there is the Empress Lucine herself to consider. Lucine, after all, commanded the Emperor's Claw. She created, in fact." Turning to Tattersail, Dujek explains that he had been commanded by Whiskey Jack to rein her in. Tattersail is in disbelief at this statement, as she questions, "Whiskey Jack commanded?" She states that this has a taste of a god's name. Dujek makes the statement that the Empire has had its history and they are all a part of it. Taishren verbally agrees with the statement. Tattersail begins to explain that this doesn't need to be anything official, and Tattersail essentially challenges Lorne to a duel, thus employing all of her magical abilities to destroy Lorne. Tak, at this point, steps forward to tell Tattersail about Lorne's Otateral sword, but notices that Tattersail was already aware of this fact. Rounding on Tattersail, Dujek tells her she's being an idiot. He then confronts Lorne and tells her that she is the adjunct and she's here on behalf of the Empress. Taishren interjects again, said to have anguish in his eyes, telling her that the girl who had a family is dead, the day she became the adjunct of the Empress. Tak observes Lorne's anger crushed by these words. Lorne simply says, "Of course," removes her hand from her sword, and then invites Tattersail in to join them for dinner. As Tattersail enters, Tak offers her a drink, and she sure could use one. He then begins to compliment her on the way she looks and associates the attire she is as coming from the luggage that she is always seen carrying around in the soldiers' camps. Apparently, this luggage is a standing joke among the soldiers, as it's said that this luggage is where all of their enemies are hiding or coming from. Dujek barks a laugh at this and tells Tattersail and Talk that he now understands where the joke originates from. The atmosphere in the room relaxes a bit, and they all sit at the table and are served their first course. Soon after, Lauren compliments Tattersail on besting the hound, but she would still like to know more details about it. I get the feeling that Tattersail is annoyed at this because she is described to have put her goblet of wine down. She tells Lauren that the gods have entered the fray and they have become involved in the Empire's plan to take over Jerusalem. Tak interrupts this and attempts to remove himself as he feels he is not privy to this info. Lauren tells him to sit as he is the Empire's representative of the Claw here. Lauren tells Tattersail to continue, suggesting that Taishren would agree that Opan's opening move has attracted that of other gods. Lauren responds by saying Shadow Throne. As she looks at the High Mage, Taishren states that he could expect Shadow Throne to be involved. However, he was unable to find any conclusive evidence of that fact after the Hound's attack. Lauren again asks Tattersail to continue. Tattersail contrives a story that the Hound being summoned was 100% an accident. Taishren responds skeptically and asks then, well, why did the Hound appear in the street? Tattersail offers an explanation that she has wards set up around her living quarters. Taishren then asks how she was able to best the Hound. Tattersail simply says, well, with luck. Lauren then asks Tattersail if she believes that Opan intervened. Tattersail agrees that they did. Tattersail was then asked why, to which she tells Lauren that she simply wishes she knew why. But Tattersail believes that the Empire may be used or a pawn in a god's game. Dujek pipes up at this point and asks if there's a way out. Tattersail says that Opan started things in Jerusalem and suggests to start there, but offers a warning that this may exactly be what Opan wants. Tak observes the relief in Tattersail's eyes when Lauren tells everyone at the table that this isn't the first time the Empire has had a god intervene. She explains to Tattersail and Taishren that it's paramount that they work together, despite their differences with Dujek, or despite their differences, while Dujek continues to prepare his legion to march, and his hold on Pale. Lauren then turns to Tak and asks him what his thoughts on Tattersail's story are. He was surprised and says that as far as everything goes, it sounds genuine, although he couldn't speak to the magic side of things, and defers to Taishren, who then confirms that the magic side of it sounds legit. The first course was removed and the second brought in. This time, everyone sat in silence eating their meal. Woofda, what a summary.
Yeah, again, quite a bit of tension there.
Oh, absolutely. And now we get the fun of digesting that and explaining that tension, because it deals directly with the very first thing that we talked about, which I thought was great.
You're talking about the prologue?
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, when I read that, I kind of, I was getting a smile on my face, like, oh, okay, here we go.
Right. Like everything is kind
So,
of coming back around, which is great.
and to kind of see things from the other side, I mean, you can tell that Tattersail has a lot of like regret and shame towards what happened, or at least that's how I felt. What happened in the mouse quarter.
Yeah, and it even ties back into one of the earlier chapters. I forget which one. But I know that it was Whiskey Jack, Kalam, and Quick Ben have a conversation about Tattersail, and they can kind of tell that something is brooding, you know, constantly in the back of Tattersale's mind. And I think this is what they're referring to, or what they think, or sorry, yeah, what it is that is Tattersale's dark history, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, it's, you know, that's which I think is why she's ready to offer herself up, to be executed. Which is kind of like, oh, I don't want that to happen, but I mean, it makes sense in a sense. I kind of get where she's coming from.
Right. I mean, she knows the laws. I mean, clearly she understands that she did some type of wrongdoing and is totally willing to take accountability for it rather than run away like she did when she left that cadre and went to another army before eventually coming back, kind of a changed woman, I would say.
Yeah,
um so let me double back to the beginning of this section. um Talk has the thought about his scar being unable, or kind of being a way of disgust to the other inhabitants of this room. And there was a mention that apparently in the seven cities there's superstition that the loss of an eye was also birth of inner sight. I just thought that was cool.
but yeah, I remember reading that, and it was pretty cool. But talks like, yeah, not buying into that scheme.
Right. But I also kind of wonder if that's a little bit of foreshadowing in some way, shape, or form. I couldn't pinpoint what, but I feel like that may come around again.
Yeah, maybe it's something they'll kind of like grow into or develop.
I just immediately go to Map and Wheel of Time when I read that, but I'm not going to spoil that. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And also, the the two hilarious parts of this very tension filled chapter. So I thought it was cool that there was um, kind of some comedy before it led into this really serious, like, oh, shit's gonna go down kind of section. Is when Dujek is scratching his arm stump. He makes a joke about, you know, the craziness of having, I would assume, like a phantom itch of some kind. And
Yeah.
Talk was like, yeah, well, I mean, at least I can scratch my eyes with both my hands.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I like that too. That was funny.
And also with the when Lauren asks Talk about the well-being of his horse, he tells her that the horse is fine and is doing handstands.
Yeah, not dead because of a disease.
Right.
Well, taking it in a very literal fashion, they're kind of always doing a handstand, right?
Yeah, yeah, I get, yeah. Right, because they're on all fours.
Yeah, I
Maybe
said it.
way to be an Onos there.
Yes. You could even call me a tool if you want.
We'll find more about that later.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We haven't come to that yet, have we?
Nope, that was okay. It's in the same chapter.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if that was from a chapter after this, then I'd be pissed. Then I would call you. So, but
I would deserve it. I would deserve it.
yeah. Yeah, at the beginning of this section, when Tattersale enters, did you catch Talk's thoughts of how Tattersale looks?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember.
He says that, or he thinks to himself that he's only seen her in battle garb,
Oh,
and
yes.
looked
Yep.
upon her as like, oh, not bad if you like
Right.
me
Yeah.
big.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that you mention it, yeah, I do remember that part. I was like, well, hey,
Kind of a dick thing to think, but I guess what do you do?
Right. Everybody's got their preferences.
That is very, very true. The one thing that I keep going to, and maybe this is just because of the character that we know as Tattersail, I'm having a hard time envisioning her killing indiscriminately. But looking at the situation, like we know that she's a new recruit, and I guess if you're just following commands, right, like Lucien's edict against sorcery, some type of proclamation from a figure of authority, uh, then it's very possible that she didn't want to upset Lucien by not following orders.
Well, I mean, yeah, when you're in the military, I mean, that's just your job, right? You do what you're told. You don't, I mean, you can think it's wrong, I guess, morally or whatever, but I mean, that's not really your job, especially when you're just a grunt.
Right. But further into dissecting this section, they talk about, or Dujek explains that they, if Tattersail were to be executed for for this type of crime because she was following an order, then Dujek, Taishra, and even Lucine herself would have to, essentially be taken to court and executed. It's great because this gives us kind of very small clues that they once all operated for the emperor. Um, which my question is was this a part of the events that led to Lucien killing the emperor? Because in the prologue it said that it's the last year of the emperor's reign. Like the prologue itself is the last year of the emperor's reign. It doesn't necessarily mean that the siege in Malaz City and the Mouse Quarter that wasn't his last day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just, I get what you're saying.
So like was Lucine once in the Emperor's command and now there's like she's revolting or committing mutiny is kind of my initial thoughts on what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's just my little stint about that is like I don't think this is anything that the emperor ordered because clearly that was his last year of his reign. So I think that the prologue is essentially a mutinous act.
That could be. I could see that.
The other question I had was when Dujek is explaining to Tattersail that um, Whiskey Jack commanded Dujek to go and get or retrieve Tattersail. And I know that in the prologue, the unnamed commander that we was talking to Gano there was another soldier who had approached him and he was given instructions to go into the mouse quarter. Do you remember that?
A little bit.
Yeah,
It's been like 2 months now, man.
yeah, it's been 9 episodes ago. But I think that was Whiskey Jack talking to Gano's all those years ago. And uh Dujek was the one that had left to go retrieve Tattersail. So another thing that just kind of like comes to back twofold. But um Tattersail, after hearing that Whiskey Jack had commanded, she out loud to everybody kind of states that it has a taste of a god's name. So I'm really curious as to why she would associate Whiskey Jack and a god's name. Like it makes me think is is a god influencing Whiskey Jack? Or has Opon been in the fray for much longer than we've thought? Is it a different god? I just thought it was an interesting and out of place association, and I'm not really quite sure what to make of it.
Yeah, I guess I'm not so sure either. There's Yeah, there's just a lot of things. A lot of things.
Yeah. Lots of stuff to digest, but at the same time, plenty of clarity, but more questions.
Yeah, you never. I feel like we always get more new questions than completed answers.
Right, right. I also another thing in this section that I thought was I didn't really do justice in summarizing it because I didn't really think that it needed to be summarized, but when Taishren kind of interjects that last time and just kind of like directly tells Adjunct that she's being unreasonable because one, her family is dead, and now she's the Empress is Adjunct, that she doesn't like she no longer that person is no longer she's no longer that person. And I wanted to swing back and elaborate more on this observation because Tak has kind of an internal dialogue within himself of this realization that Lauren's current role. Lauren had brought up wrong from her past that needed to be righted or to bring justice to a wrong from which she was clearly denied, but not really by the words or, rebuttals from Dujek or Taishren, but that of the role of adjunct itself. So, simply put, Lauren was denied justice by herself. I just thought that was so poetically beautiful.
It was nicely done.
Thank you, sir. Another thing, I had so many like things to digest here. Um, and you know how talk is all like he is going to like interject in this duel and tell Tattersail about the Otarel sword, and then he notices that Tattersail has already observed that, and I'm assuming it's because Lauren's hand is said to be removed from the sword, so I can only assume that at some point she had put her hand on the sword, to which Tattersail noticed that her hand is on the sword and observed that it's a mage killer.
Right. Yeah, I did. It's kind of goes back to the, okay, well, you're not going to execute me, then let's duel, knowing that she isn't going to stand a chance.
Right. It was cool how he said it without saying it. You know, like we're given the information, but it's not like the direct information. Like Lauren puts her hand on the arterial sword, and Tattersail saw that it was an arterial sword or an Atarel sword. I'm not even sure how to say that word.
Yeah, I don't know if there was like a pronunciation in the back, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure either. So I'm not even going to try to correct you or anything.
Nah, we'll just go with it. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's all the notes that I had about this section. But I feel like these last three sections have like really brought in a lot of clarity as to the story so far, and it just adds on top of the amazement that this book already is.
for sure. Yeah, I would agree with you.
But yeah, what do you say we move on to your pretty lengthy section?
Sure thing. So Sale was wobbly and woozy, and not because of the wine she drank. She was nervous, and it tasted like water and had no alcoholic effect. Adjutant Lauren had caused memories to resurface that she had buried. It had been an important moment in Lauren's life, just another terrible one for Sale. It was because of that moment she was attached to the Second Army. She knew he had lied for her and it saved her life, referring to Talk, the younger there. So long ago, when she entered the mouse quarter, she cared for no one but herself. Even when she tried to distance herself from her past, it was still because she was only concerned with herself. She tried to run, but the Empire put the kibosh on it. An old soldier approached her and told her, quote, "Should you ever outrun the guilt within your past, sorceress, you will have to outrun your soul. When it finds you again, it will kill you." I thought that was a cool quote. Shortly after that, she was transferred to the 5th Army, which was full of veterans, until the time came for her to return to the 2nd under Dujek. She entered her room, and Paran came out of the bedroom and says that he's surprised she's not arrested. So was Tattersall. He says Hairlock was there and wanted a message delivered. He was excited and knew of Lauren's arrival and that she wasn't alone. She wanted to know if he understood what he meant by not alone. Hairlock had said that dust walks around the adjunct, the dirt shifts beneath her boots, and the wind whispers of ice and fire. Pran didn't know what this meant. Uh, at this point, when I read that, I was like, okay, that's got to be the Talan IMS, and just from that description. Lastly, Hairlock had said that the adjunct and her companion were leaving Pale, and that he intended to track them. Paran trailed off, and Sale caught onto this and called him out. Paran says he does know something of the adjunct's plan in Darujistan because he was supposed to be her contact there. Holy shit. Sale is pissed, and she lays into him. Was he going to oversee the bridge burners? I cannot talk, sorry. Was he going to oversee the bridge burners' destruction and kill Whiskey Jack and cut down the squad from the inside? Paran is adamant that this is not the case and says no. Sale is about to cook up some magic and blast his ass to hell. She curses Open for letting him live. She gives him a chance to speak, but tells him to keep his hands off his sword. I think that's another maybe hint that it's a Otateral sword, what have you. He tells her how this has been the adjunct's personal mission, tells her about the hounds slaughtering hundreds of soldiers, and that she wouldn't believe it if she saw. But she is already aware of this story from Quickbena and Kalam. Paran is stunned, wants to know how she knows. Sale just tells Paran to continue. Lauren had come from the capital and taken over. And we're talking about the attack earlier in the book, towards the beginning at Itko Khan. She figured the attack had been a diversion. They found a trail, though it was not clear, and figured out that a girl had become possessed by a god. Sale asks which god, and Paran says it should be obvious. The company killed by Shadowhounds, so Shadow Throne comes to mind. And he's kind of being a sarcastic little dickhead. The adjunct thinks Shadow Throne was involved, but the god possessing the girl is the rope, Shadow Throne's companion. It isn't a question, but Sale says they found the girl. Paran says yes, and Sale says it's sorry. Paran is able to deduct that if she knows, Whiskey Jack knows as well. Who else would have told her this? He's confused, and Sale says he's not the only one. So this was all just a search for the girl. Sale doesn't think that could be it. Doesn't think that could be the only thing. Paran says that is all that he knows, and Sale does believe him. She wants to know the specifics to the plan, and again, Paran doesn't know, but knows that she would be able to find him through Sari. Maybe Lorne is linked to Paran, Sale says. Paran asks if that's the case, why is she not kicking the door in at this moment? Sale says Open severed the link between them, and that the hints Hairlock left means that Lorne has a Talan Imus, confirming at least my suspicions from just a few paragraphs ago. She thinks the mission has two objectives, to kill Sari and Whiskey Jack and the squad. She wouldn't need a Talan Imus if the plan only involved him. Her Otateral sword would be enough to kill Sari, and maybe even enough for the rope, too. Paran doesn't think that the adjunct would betray him. Sale asks what would keep her from doing it, and Paran has no answer. Paran asks who Hairlock's master is. Sale replies that it is Quickben. He's the best she's seen, maybe not the strongest, but he's smart. But that won't matter if the Talan Imus sneaks up on him or anyone else. Sale says she needs to leave Pale. Perrin says not alone. Sale says she has to go alone because if he goes with, the adjunct will find Whiskey Jack also. Bran still doesn't think that she would betray Whiskey Jack. He asks if she can kill Sorry. She says she doesn't know, but it would be Whiskey Jack's decision. Bran is still full of cabin fever and wants to leave. Sale says she can get him into the city and no one will recognize him. Get a room at the inn, ditch your uniform, and hide out. She should be back in about 2 weeks. You can wait that long, right? Well, maybe not. Bran asks what would happen if he went and introduced himself to Dujek. Well, for one, Tayshren's gonna fuck your shit up. Dujek might be able to protect him, but don't count on it. Tayshren outranks him. She tells him he will be alone. Bran says that he'll be alone too once she leaves. Sale acknowledges this and says that it won't be forever. She admits that she feels some sort of way towards him, and she's not felt in a long time. Sale says she's exhausted. Bran asks how thoroughly exhausted she is. He takes her hand and leads her into the bedroom to bone down, and when he walked out of the room the first time, he probably put a sign above the bed that said, "Welcome to Plowtown."
Bow chicka wow wow. It's so what about Cole? How do you think Cole feels about this? I mean, he's dead, but Soft Pillows is getting some, and it's not him.
Well, it doesn't matter, I guess.
So it is finally revealed that Sorry was possessed by a god. So we were right. We were right.
Yeah, we're right.
We were right. But what we were wrong about is they think it's cotillion, which is the rope, as we've learned in previous chapters. So cotillion is possessing Sorry, from what I'm gathering. Still feel like that might be wrong, but that's at least what I am immediately going to.
I like the names of these gods. Hood, the rope, Shadow Throne. Like, I don't know. It's just
Yeah, I mean, there's a clear definition, or I guess a defining line between these names. Like, you automatically associate them with like the darker side of things.
yeah, I like the rope. Like, are you supposed to think of like a hangman's noose? That's kind of what I think.
Right? Yeah. And we know that Cotillion is he's also an assassin, but from the back of the book, Amanus is he's the king of Shadow Throne.
I don't know if I have anything to say on that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things that a lot of the things that we already know. The majority of the section, we the reader, we already know, but this is the first where Tattersale and Paran, like, everything's kind of to them starting to make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, they're starting to get their clarity on things.
Right, which I think is pivotal because now they can start to kind of make the decisions based on the information that they have. So, I thought I never even put the association of Lorne linking with Paran. I don't know what in the previous chapters really gave that away though. Like, I can't really recall any type of situation where like there would have been a moment where they linked. So
I think I mean, whatever it was something that he wasn't aware of.
Right.
But I didn't pick up on it reading through either.
So, but it could also just be Tattersale speculating, as to why Lorne isn't like knocking down the room right now to find Ganos, because nobody knows where he is. except for Hairlock and Tattersale, Quick Ben, Whiskey Jack, and Kalam.
What do you think of the budding relationship here? I got to think it's more than a, you know, hookup.
A wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Um, I don't know. I guess I was more like shocked, surprised, I guess, that they hooked up. I mean, especially with all of the tension that is in these sections between the two, and the level of distrust could be so easily overcome. But I guess I guess it just go to like real life situations. If I were to, I guess, where would this go? What type of interest would this be? Are both people on the same page? Are they just doing it to please or pleasure oneself and that's it? Or, does this turn into a relationship and they, I guess, take things on together?
I think there's going to be something more there because they both have admitted to having some sort of feelings for the other one. More than just hey, you're looking good. Let's do this.
True, true. Yeah, you bring up a good point there. I guess I didn't really think more outside of they were fucking. You know, that's all I gathered from this section is that they did the horizontal mambo.
Maybe that's all it is for now, but maybe it'll. I think there's going to be something more later on.
Yeah, I think that is it? I guess now that we're talking about it, like, is this a connection blooming, or does this lead to a strangeness? Is it awkward afterwards? Do they, you know, does she tell him to get out the next morning or does she make him breakfast? You know,
I don't know. I don't know if Pran's going to get a ham sandwich or not.
he's already getting a hand sandwich.
Oh boy.
Oh shit. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't really have a lot in this section. I feel like I should though, but I feel like it was a recap of everything that we kind of previously know, and Hairlock makes some mysterious omen about something which we believe is essentially Lauren's plan, which I think is funny because it seems that the plan or her mission that we've gathered is completely different than what Paran thinks her mission is. Like from Paran's when he met up with shit, what's his name? The green suited dude. Topper. Topper. Fucking Topper. Never changes his pants, Topper. That's what it is. Because Topper tells Paran that he's to go to Jerujistan or to meet up at Pale so that he could go to Jerujistan. Because he needs to. Well, no. Jerujistan is something that happened after that, but he was supposed to go. He was supposed to go and essentially get to know Sorry.
I thought it was interesting that Tattersale said she could disguise Paran, cast a spell or what have you, that'll for like keep him looking different for 2 weeks. So, how long, could you change how somebody looks indefinitely?
I guess, yeah. I didn't even think of that. I guess that makes me go back to like Harry Potter when they do that like changing spell,
Yeah.
but just more of a temporary thing.
That was the only other thing I had.
Cool. Well, let's move on to one of the last sections here.
Take it away, my friend.
So at at false dawn, Lorne led out from Pale's east gate. Heading towards the southern horizon, the Rivi Plain became the Catlin Plain. By midday, she would approach the first watering hole, to which she filled up on water. As she was drinking from her water pouch, she was startled as a voice spoke to her from her right side. It was Onos Tulin, who said that he would walk with her for some time. Lorne, rather pissed, tells Onos that she wished he would announce himself from a distance. He buries himself back in the ground, and Lorne continues to walk. She then sees a silhouette about 100 yards off. As she approaches, it's Onos standing, waiting for her to arrive. She asks him why he has to be a tool, and so literal minded. All Ono said is that he accepts the name Tool, as his history is dead. This name signifies a new beginning. Lorne asks why he was selected to accompany her. He replies by saying that he is the only one amongst his clan to survive the 28th Jaghut War. Lorne's eyes widen as she says that she thought those wars numbered in the 27s when their legion left the empire after conquering the seven cities, and that they marched into the wastelands. Tool explains that his bone caster sensed surviving Jaghut there, and Commander Logros Talan had sent them to exterminate the Jaghut. This makes sense to Lorne as she recalls the Talan amass returning with very few numbers. She then stares at Tool and tells him that they could have simply informed the Empress where they were going, as she was left without her most powerful army and no idea when they would return. Tool simply says that their return was not guaranteed. This makes even more sense to Lorne. Tool goes on more about the Talan amass. Lorne wonders how Tool could be so forthcoming, as she recalls that the Talan amass has always been regarded as the silent host, and that only Commander Logros was known to speak to humans. Lorne already had more information about the Talan amass than the entire Empire's annals did. She asked if Tool has ever met the Emperor. He explains that he knelt to the Emperor as he sat on the first throne. She then asks if the Emperor was alone, to which Tool explains that Dancer was at his side. Lorne curses to herself and asks Tool where the first throne whereabouts were. After a moment of silence, Tool replies to this question by saying that after the Emperor's death, there was a gathering of the Logros Talan Imas mines, and a binding of some sort takes place, and that the answer she seeks is somewhere within this binding, and that he cannot satisfy her question. This holds true for the Logros and Kron. Lorne asks, well, who are the Kron? He simply says that they are coming. Lorne asks what the significance of the Kron coming was. Tool explains that this is the year of the 300th millennia, and that Dysoporia would end. Cool little section. We really get a pretty deep insight to the Talani mass.
Yeah. So the diaspora. So it tells me the Tilan Imus are coming back. The diaspora would be just like people being forced out of their homeland or leaving, I guess, whether forced or not, but I guess fleeing, you could say.
Right, which brings me back to the binding. Did the Emperor bind the Talani mass to like different sections of the world, and now they're all like unbound because of his death, and they're all essentially conjuring back together?
I get the feeling that they're gonna come back in mass and maybe slaughter everybody. I
Right.
don't know. I guess we'll have to find out.
Right. My question just goes to like whose side are they going to be on though? Like are they going to be like an army of the empire or are they going to be an army against the empire?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
So,
It's just kind of. I think it's too soon to tell. I mean, don't. Yeah, I don't have any clue at all.
right. And you know, why is Tool so I guess willing with the information that he's giving Lorne about like who they are, what he was, where they've been, you know, all of this kind of stuff cuz you know, she even says that it's more than any type of record she has or read of what the Empire knew about the Tilani Mass. You know, obviously there's different sections, there's different commanders, there's different leaders, there's different clans, so to speak. So,
But only one of them ever talked to the Empire.
right. So I don't know if that's I had a hard time kind of putting everything into place, and that's just I feel like it's because it's the first time we're really getting a sense of the Talani Mass, but I feel like some of this will make sense in hopefully the next chapters or books even. But we're just kind of getting our first inside to what is the Talani Mass, which I still find so fascinating, and I really hope I can make sense of this stuff in the future.
I'm sure we'll be able to. I I think they're going to play a role.
Right. But like everything that we've read up into this book, it's like we get all of the information that leads the characters one way, and then that destination is revealed, or that plot is revealed, or, you know, it's almost, I always just always associate it to a movie that you don't find out about anything until the very end.
I gotcha. Yeah.
But it's like multiple
They're-
movies within a movie.
yeah, it does feel that way.
But yeah, I wish I had more to digest, but I'm not quite sure if I really know what I'm digesting in this little section. I know it seems that Lauren is traveling to Jerujistan, is what I'm assuming, because she's heading south
Yeah, that's what I would think too.
to fulfill her mission. So I'm curious as to see how she interconnects with our folks in Jerujistan. And even, you
Yeah, I
know,
wonder what kind of payoff we'll get.
right. And even like, you know, if Paran and Tattersail are essentially in bed together. Haha, no pun intended.
Ooh,
What like where their journey begins too. Like, do they surprise Lauren in Jerujistan? Or do they meet up with Whiskey Jack? Do they, you know, thwart Lauren's plan? Do they go along with it? So it's just like while we wrap up one set of questions now, a bunch of other ones start. So
yeah. Well, I don't. I mean, I don't think Pran's going to be going. You know, even though they were hooking up, I still don't think he's going to be going with Tattersail. At least right now.
that's your
You know,
prediction?
he's gonna. You know, I think she's gonna go do whatever she needs to do, like she said, and he's gonna. You know, maybe he'll follow behind shortly after, but I don't think they're. You know, they're not going to be walking side by side holding hands or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. I think you're right there.
So I guess we'll have to find out here. I don't know if it'll be this next chapter or later on, but I don't know. I am interested to see how this is going to play out, and yeah, what kind of relationships are going to pop up, and how they're going to intermingle and relate to everything.
Yeah. The only one last thing I have with this section is it kind of goes back to the whole binding concept. At one moment, Lauren was just like, you know, why are you so forthcoming with this information? Um, and from what I understand, it was because of the death of Tool's chieftain for some reason has become unbound to Logros. So I don't know if it's purely just that type of a hierarchy where, like, if you sever the one between the high commander and the one below that, if that is no longer, yeah, that's just where I go. I'm curious as to find out more about this binding thing with the Talanimass and all of the lore and world building that is taking place throughout this chapter.
Well, I mean, we've seen a lot of, I guess I'm not sure what the right word, I guess races in this world, that they can live for a long time. We got the ravens that, can live a really fucking long time, centuries, thousands of years. And, the Talanimus, apparently they can live for hundreds of years too, maybe longer. And, Dujek, he's what, 70, 80, but he doesn't really look like it.
Yeah, so
I don't know if we know how old Animander Rake is. I don't remember that, but I thought there was somebody else who was like 800 years old or something like that.
I mean, Hairlock and Tattersail. Tattersail, I think, is like in her 200s.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I can only assume other high mages or wielders of magic have some age to them as well.
Right.
But speaking of a crone, you want to take away this next section?
Yeah, this will close it up. A different perspective to end this beast of a chapter. Crone soars above the Rivi plain. She can feel changes coming to this world. Gods were walking the planet to do battle. Crone could feel the magic, and it made her feel alive. Crone was being summoned by her master, but not Lord of Moonspawn, Animander Rake. She had more than one, and knew that would make things more interesting. She had her own plans, and she would not divulge those now. Knowledge was power. The only secret she wanted to know more than any other was the mystery surrounding Caladan Brood. Caladan is half human. She approached Black Dog Forest. And that is the end of the chapter. So, there's a couple paragraphs. But to me, I guess, the secret to the reader is who's this other master of hers. To me, that's probably more interesting than at least Caladan Brood right now, because we've only heard that Caladan Brood by name. We haven't met this person, from a perspective yet, their own or somebody else meeting them. So I'm curious, who the other master is. Does Animander Rake know that? It must be playing more than one side. So
that's the sense that I get too. I guess if I was Animander Rake and I guess my lackey or right hand command, I guess is what I would put Crone as, had, or leader of the Ravens, which are, their home is my giant floating mountain. I wouldn't want them to have another master, so I'm assuming this is a secret, like you're saying. But I also feel like Caladan only being half human, but obviously there are other creatures out there. So is he a demigod? Is he, what is his other half, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like, to make, I guess, kind of a simple comparison, I feel like Barghast must kind of be like orcs a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of the sense I'm getting too. Yeah.
So what is the other half?
But also,
I'm sure we'll find that out too.
Right. Also, though, I mean, maybe we're looking into it too deeply, because if Crone was being summoned by her master, but not Lord of Moonspawn, but she's heading to Black Dog Forest, which
from what I understand, is where Caladan Brood is currently residing. So is Caladan Brood her other master?
Could be, I guess. I don't know.
That sense of an environment that like she can feel all of this magic, and it's, I guess, so euphoric that it makes her feel alive. Definitely some shit's coming. Right, that is some pretty ominous foreshadowing.
Oh yeah, I'm sure shit's gonna hit the fan.
Yeah, I guess we'll end on a similar cliffhanger with just shit's gonna hit the fan.
I don't really know what else there is to say,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of where things feel like they're leading for sure.
It really makes you feel like you want more. Like, I've had a hard time not reading Gardens of the Moon. Just kind of been reading this current chapter because there's a lot that takes place and a lot to digest, and I'm thankful that I read it a few times.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been going just about 3 hours here on this one. It's I think what we both kind of had in mind might happen here.
Yeah, which is, I think,
for this one.
the reason why we didn't try to cram it into our busy schedule this week. So thank you all for your patience. We really wanted to give you the non-rushed experience.
Yeah, I'd rather, maybe it gets pushed out a few days, but I don't want to rush it either. And it's more fun when we can just sit down and do it kind of at our own pace rather than worrying about a clock.
Right. Exactly. Because if we would have done this at our normal time, we would be getting done probably about 11:30 midnight.
Maybe even later, yeah.
Right. I will say it is kind of weird to talk to you with like light flooding into the windows rather than the street lamp. But
it is what it is.
Yeah, it's always good to catch up with you. Talk some
definitely
Gardens of the Moon.
Some books and bullshit about some other stuff for a little bit. So I guess we should probably wrap things up here.
Let's wrap it up. Hopefully that's what Gano's did too.
Oh boy, wasn't expecting that.
Sorry, man. Would it be bad if I said you should wrap his tool?
Oh boy.
I'm good. I'm full of it. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, we can be found on 5 platforms now. Thank you to Cannibal Crusader here, who has signed us up for, I think it's an Android only app. It's called Addict. You could download that and you can find our channel on there, as well as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and Spotify.
Yes, and then as far as the socials, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just search D&J's Epic Quest. Twitter is by far the most active. Don't seem to get much interaction on Facebook. Looks like there's a little bit on Instagram. I tried messing with that, but not really my thing. But Twitter, we're up to 75 followers now. So we're growing. Appreciate everybody following along and having a good time with us.
Awesome. Well,
also, I think it would be, we've gotten some feedback, but it would be cool to, maybe see a review. I'm not pleading for a 5-star review or anything like that, but just, some feedback on the podcast side of things. I know I listen to some other podcasts, and I know they say that, rating and reviewing helps get things out to others, so makes it more discoverable. So if anybody wants to do that, whatever you feel is a fair rating, and just leave us an honest review. We'd love to read it.
Yes, we would. Yes. We like constructive criticism as well.
Yeah, don't be a dick.
Don't be a fucking jerk. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I guess till next time.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Talk to you later, bud.
Later, man.